Democrats had a good news cycle, and it was, poll after poll, all kinds of discussion about how great this is in the mainstream media and everything else, and it fundamentally kind of reshaped the race in a lot of ways. Well, did it? We're gonna go through on a state by state basis. Seems to me this thing is exactly, to paraphrase Denny Green, they are who we thought they were.
Donald Trump's coalition, the longer he's been in politics, has gotten more diverse, has gotten less politically engaged. It's become a cultural phenomenon. I mean, it's the reason why he's doing all of these, podcasts and stuff like that. I mean, it is very hard. This isn't even a knock on pollsters. It is very hard to survey what a presidential election universe is going to look like, because you're looking at the data of vote history and propensity to turn out.
Trump's chances in Georgia have been bolstered in the last week by this new alliance with one of the most popular governors in America, Brian Kemp. His numbers are over 60%, and Trump is really pursuing that relationship because he knows that Kemp has the keys to winning big in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, he's as close to a godfather in a state as we have in modern politics at this point.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Well, summer is dead and gone. Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety program. I'm Josh Holmes, along with a saucy Michael Duncan. He's a little snippy today, so you got to watch out for that. John Ashbrook on the end, left to right across your radio dial. It's a post-Labor Day environment. You know, as they say, old adage in politics, that the campaign starts today.
Yeah. I disagree that I'm snippy.
Yeah.
It's just that there is no rest for the weary. There is no break on Labor Day. I've been laboring, folks, and continue to labor.
And maybe an insult to injury and all that, and then you get the traffic of all the people who've been enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Over the last 30 to 60 days. Now they're all
it's fine.
They're back. Good.
It's okay.
Spirits high.
It's okay.
You're going to power through though,
It's
right?
just, it's look, I mean, no complaints, but it's just sort of like it's like tax season for accountants right now for us, which is fine. It's just it's a lot of work.
Old man's not snippy. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. He's fine.
It's just that
Everybody shut up.
Fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. Just gonna crush up an Adderall, take a Celsius, and I'll see you on November 6th.
Welcome indeed. Well, we've got a lot to get to here on this edition of Ruthless Variety program. As we said, I mean, the general election campaign, it is the old adage that everybody sort of tunes in a post-Labor Day environment. So we wanted to take the top of the program to explain what that means. We went through basically a 7-week period from the moment that old Joe Biden decided to exit stage left and replace himself with the leftist Kamala chameleon. Democrats had a good news cycle, and it was, poll after poll, all kinds of discussion about how great this is in the mainstream media and everything else, and it fundamentally kind of reshaped the race in a lot of ways. Well, did it? We're gonna go through on a state by state basis. Seems to me this thing is exactly, to paraphrase Denny Green, they are who we thought they were.
Mm-hmm. and it's up to us to decide how we're going to conduct this race through Election Day. Because continuing that quote, we can't let them off the hook.
We'll let them off the hook.
We can't let them off the hook.
No, we can't let them off the hook. No question about it. So we're going to show you some graphics here right off the top so we can get right into the meat of the program. You know how much that Wolf likes meat, so he forces us to do this sort of thing. But right off the top, graphic 1, if we can get to this. So this is the general election Trump v. Harris trends. Now, what you'll see is this is kind of the national stuff. And it looks, much like I just described, as though Harris has had a tremendous bump from where Joe Biden was and went from a deficit on the national election. Remember, this is not any state-by-state stuff. This is the full country, popular vote, matters not in the race to 270. But she's clearly sprung ahead. And this is the Real Clear Politics averages that we're working. This is what we're looking at.
Aggregating all of the polls.
You know what catches my attention immediately on this average is that Kamala's number is 48. And I'm not saying she can't get above 48, but we all sort of talked about how that is Joe Biden's high water mark. He's a 48% man. No matter how you slice it, this country is divided evenly between Republicans and Democrats, and Biden couldn't get above 48. I think it's interesting that after a full month of super PAC work by the mainstream media to boost Kamala and turn her into something different, that she is right there at 48.
I do think that's right. I mean, it's hard to imagine a distinction between where she's at right now and if you had that same 7-week period behind Joe Biden, where it was not like, so let's say just go back, Back to the Future type stuff, and you go back to June in that debate. If all of a sudden, he Benjamin Buttoned himself and was a 30-year younger version and crushed that debate, you'd have had a pretty similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, the media would have found a way to reconstitute the Democratic coalition for Joe Biden. I mean, do not forget that every single one of these people were saying, we would never get rid of Joe. We are in Joe's corner.
Right.
And they're all in for Kamala now, I mean, like, it would have happened.
Yeah, and just here's another important thing when you're thinking about national polls, and you're going to see some of these come out in the media, and there's been some this weekend, where they're going to talk about what we just showed you, and they're going to say this is sort of a sea change in a race. Remember, Democrats actually have to have a national advantage that is relatively significant. At minimum, 2 or 3 or 4 points. Some make an argument you would need to win by 5 or 6 in order to make a difference in the states that actually are going to determine the race to 270, which elects the president of the United States. California and New York are not in play. Hugely populous places. Their votes all run up that total in a significant way on the national side. They don't necessarily matter at all in the grand scheme of things because it's Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. You could throw North Carolina in. I'm not that worried about North Carolina. But that's basically the substance of it. So we're going to go through some of these things. Here's graphic number 2. We'll start off with Arizona and Nevada. You notice these are 2 states that Donald Trump lost in 2020. At no point was he polling ahead.
Yeah.
After the whole coronation, he's still ahead.
I think that's wild, man. I honestly think that they have really put their backs into making Kamala Harris something brand new and perfect. What the media thinks is perfect, and what they also think the voters want. And that number, if we could put that graphic back up, Spaghettis, these numbers in Arizona and Nevada with Trump leading are it's very significant. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because the point that you made that Trump was trailing in both of these surveys in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for our audio-only listeners, the average here has Donald Trump up 0.2% in Arizona and 0.6% in Nevada. So, like, how do you close the deal here in these 2 states? And I think these 2 paired together in the same graphic are interesting because the rest of the coalition that Donald Trump has to shore up in these states is pretty disparate. With Arizona, his problem has been with your sort of McCain Republicans in Maricopa County.
Yeah.
And he needs to do better with them than he did in 2020 in order to win the state. In fact, that has been the source of all of our electoral problems in the state since, basically 2018.
Yep. Correct.
But the nut to crack in Nevada is a little bit different. The coalition's more multi-ethnic in Clark County.
Huge Hispanic component.
And you really got to drive up turnout in the rurals.
Yep.
And this is a state that mails out a ballot, like a lot of states out there in the West. And so it's incredibly important for the Trump campaign and Republican groups to organize ABEV chase programs in that state to make sure we don't fall behind, the union bosses organizing efforts to return those mail ballots.
No question about it. It's a big deal. And I've seen some numbers within the Hispanic community. It seems like the incremental progress in places like Nevada is unmistakable, right? I mean, this isn't an overnight phenomenon But we talked a lot about this in 2020, how Trump started making significant inroads. 22, although we came up short in Nevada, the Hispanic number was significantly better than the previous Senate election there. And then 24, you look at it, and it's almost a parity. Mm-hmm. You're almost splitting a Hispanic vote, a vote that Joe Biden had 60% of. Right? And so things are starting to happen, but they're locking in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of that is because things that we've talked about on the show before, things that we've observed in the state of Nevada, that these Latino voters are very economically driven. They have small businesses that they're trying to grow, and when Democrats go to them and lie and say, oh, no, it's actually really good right now, you just need to wait a little bit longer, they don't believe it.
Yep.
They're like, well, everything costs so much money. You know, and how am I going to keep my company afloat?
They knock on the door and they're like, "Hola, Latinx."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. Would you like a pamphlet on transgenderism?
Right, exactly. And they're like, wait a minute, I'm just trying to keep my company afloat.
Right.
It's like, hey, dude, I've been here for 50 years.
Right.
Get off my porch.
Yeah.
So the next graphic we want to put up, graphic 3. So we're talking a little bit of the southeast of the United States when you're talking about Georgia and North Carolina. We have long maintained here on the Variety program that there is no way that a Democrat can win the White House without Pennsylvania, and there is no way for a Republican to win the White House without Georgia. That continues to be true. This has become a much more interesting race than it was. Trump maintained pretty significant leads there throughout the spring and summer. That has tightened a lot. That is something that I think some of us saw coming regardless, because you had this sort of influx of younger and African-American voters who have played a significant role in Georgia politics over the last 2 election cycles. They immediately consolidated behind Kamala Harris, and they were basically not counted. Before that, I mean, they were just not engaged.
Turns out there's a little more enthusiasm for a black presidential nominee than Joe Biden,
an 82-year-old
who was shoved down their throat in South Carolina by the Congressional Black Caucus in 2020 because the powers that be had decided he was the only one who could beat Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But Trump's chances in Georgia have been bolstered in the last week by this new alliance with one of the most popular governors in America, Brian Kemp. His numbers are over 60%, and Trump is really pursuing that relationship because he knows that Kemp has the keys to winning big in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, he's as close to a godfather in a state as we have in modern politics at this point. I mean, this is a guy who's not only won despite Republican struggles on the national level over the last 6 years, he's won big. Mm-hmm. And not only in the context of general elections, but primary elections. So he's popular across the board. Extremely important not to have what has been a pretty contentious relationship, and you've seen Trump try to repair that.
It has not been peachy, to use a Georgia pun.
There it is. There it is.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's all water under the bridge now, hopefully.
It seems like it. Yeah. Can we throw it up one more time just to take a look at it? So here's what's important, though. In all 4 of the graphics that we've showed you, it's less than a 1% difference.
Yeah, that's Trump 0.3 for our audio listeners in Georgia, Trump 0.9 in North Carolina.
Yeah. So my experience with North Carolina, the reason I say that I'm not terribly worried about it, is that one always polls super tight until super late. And, you know, I used to think about that in the early 2000s, Republicans had this issue in states like Michigan or New Jersey, where you'd see something on paper all through the summer and be like, man, that's close. That's within striking distance. Like, maybe we can win that state. And then you see the turnout model and what ultimately happens on election day, and what was anywhere from a 1-point deficit is a 5-6 point win. North Carolina seems to me to be in that same kind of territory. Like, they always break late, and they always break relatively consistently to the Republican side, at least in the last 10 years.
And I don't know if you guys saw it, but the New York Times did a long story about how rural voters in North Carolina matter big time this election.
Yeah.
And there is nothing in rural North Carolina that is culturally significant on an economic basis as the tobacco industry. It's like coal in West Virginia and coal in Kentucky. It is a cultural issue in the state of North Carolina. And the Biden administration and Kamala are trying to outlaw all these different things related to tobacco. That's not real good for rural voters in North Carolina.
People get it. They tune into that. It might be the first time you've heard it, or last episode, the first time you've heard it from us. But, I mean, in North Carolina, they live this. And it's a very, very important set of issues. Let's go to graphic 4, Wisconsin and Michigan. This is a part of the old blue wall, as they say, the industrial Midwest, the northern Midwest. And these are two states that Donald Trump won in 2016 and lost in 2020. But if you can look at the graphic, you've got very, very slight Harris leads here. Hillary Clinton's leads in 2016 were like 8.
Wow, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it was a big, big number. Now, Donald Trump was relatively new at this on the scene. I don't think pollsters had a very good grasp or understanding of the coalition that made up the ultimate Trump universe of voters, and I think they undersampled a lot. I think they've corrected for some of that, but the point is, if I am in the Trump campaign and I'm looking at that, you're going full boat there. I mean, look at that. It's tight as a tick.
Yeah, 1 point in Wisconsin is the Harris lead, 2.2 the Harris lead in Michigan. Now, I mean, to Holmes's point, Clinton was leading it by 6, 8 points in both those states coming into the election in 2016, and we all remember how that went down. I do think there's still an issue with polling the Trump electorate, especially in states like this. And I think they've corrected for some of it, don't get me wrong, but I still feel like Donald Trump's coalition, the longer he's been in politics, has gotten more diverse, has gotten less politically engaged. I mean, it's become a cultural phenomenon. I mean, it's the reason why he's doing all of these, podcasts and stuff like that. I mean, it is very hard. This isn't even a knock on pollsters. It is very hard to survey what a presidential election universe is going to look like, because you're looking at the data of vote history and propensity to turn out, and you're building a model of a poll based on that information.
Yep.
But presidential elections are entirely a different thing. They are different than midterms. They're different than other statewide elections. The amount of awareness that goes into a presidential campaign is 100 times the rest of our politics. And so actually knowing who's going to turn out is a very difficult task.
Yeah. Additional weight here is you've also got a couple of Senate races laying over top of that. One is an open seat vacated by Debbie Stabenow in Michigan.
Debbie, spend it now.
Yeah, I got other nicknames too that I'm probably going to stop and not say. But yes, Debbie spend it now. That's a good one. Her vacating that seat has opened up a real opportunity. Mike Rogers, the Republican nominee, has done yeoman's work, I think, in not only winning that primary, but then getting to a place where he has got close Trump adhesion on his ballot question. So if you look at a state where how Donald Trump performs, if Donald Trump wins that state, there's a good chance you pick up a Republican Senate seat in addition to that, which he would sorely need to confirm a new cabinet and get the kind of things done that he's talking about in this election race. Wisconsin's kind of the same situation. Remember in 2016, he won narrowly, so did Ron Johnson, a seat that Democrats had written into their playbook, that this was a fait accompli, that they were going to win, and obviously that was a big surprise to them the day after Election Day. You can kind of see the makings of some of that stuff there, right? I don't want to give anybody false hope that we're all trending in the right direction. I mean, these states did have an advantage pretty significantly for Donald Trump 2 months ago. A lot has happened in 2 months, all of it bad for the Republican side, all of it good for the Democratic side. But the coronation is over. You're in a post-Labor Day environment. That's going to stabilize out. And as we said in the episode before, if you were to ask yourself in 2023, what was a general election in 24 look like? That's kind of what it looks like. Yep. I mean, we are where we are. Here's graphic 5, and this is the granddaddy of them all, I think, for this particular presidential election. The state of Pennsylvania.
Keystone State.
The Keystone State.
Properly named for this election.
Yeah, yeah. Complete with the city of brotherly love and the Steel City.
Yeah.
All of those things. It shows Trump with a narrow of narrowest advantage. Again, you set that against the backdrop of what's happened up to this point. If that kind of coronation doesn't give you a lead,
Right.
what is?
Right.
You know? I mean, look at the races that we talked. Again, you go back to 2016. Both Donald Trump and Pat Toomey were trailing outside of the margin of error going into that race. This is a lead, at least an aggregated poll lead for Donald Trump there. You got a big Senate race there with Dave McCormick taking on Bob Casey.
So my take on Pennsylvania in particular, and I understand there's union voters all across the country and especially in the industrial Midwest and those states like Michigan and Wisconsin, but I feel like the union voter in Pennsylvania just culturally has turned against the Democratic Party in a lot of these places. And if you look at registration by party changes here over the last year, you'll notice it, you know, significantly. In a lot of counties you wouldn't have previously thought. I mean, I'm thinking like Luzerne County, like the Wilkes-Barre Scranton DMA. Funny fact is the last poll that I saw of Joe Biden's fave-unfave in Scranton.
Yeah.
Remember Scranton Joe?
Scranton Joe.
You know, he's just, real salt of the earth.
Bootstrap guy.
Guy from
Yeah.
Scranton.
Regular old.
Complete fucking lie. His favorability in the Scranton DMA, his last poll was 25%.
Yeah, that hurts.
25%. I mean, like, that's way below his national average of favorability.
Yep.
Like, these people hated its guts.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lingering effect of that despite the fact they changed candidates.
Well, then J.D. Vance has been focused like a laser on that blue-collar union
Both
vote.
him and Walz, I feel like they recognize that this is the linchpin to success in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and JD is talking to every single audience that gathers. I mean, it's not in Pennsylvania, he was in Boston last week talking to a bunch of union guys, and they were cheering him on, and his speech goes right at these workers. It goes right over the top of the union bosses and right to the people who something out of their paycheck every single month goes to the union. He is like offering a brand new sort of spin on what Republicans are for working people. And it's a very, very attractive message to this cohort you're talking about.
Yeah.
No question about it. I mean, look, Pennsylvania is, as what was it, Carville used to say, it's Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Alabama in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I was born there. They'd call it Pennsyltucky.
Yeah, right.
Pennsyltucky.
Pennsyltucky.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful country.
but that's turnout. And what we've seen in 2020, what we saw in 2016, every time Donald Trump's name's on a ballot, they turn out. And they come out, and I think that would be a real problem. If I was polling that state, I'd want to take a hard look at what's happening in those sort of suburb counties around Philadelphia, Bucks,
Chester.
Delaware County. Those are traditionally Republican counties. They've become very blue, but they're economically facing, and there's no good economic news out there. And so at some point, they've made their decision about the fact that they don't like Donald Trump, but you also have to figure out how to feed your families over the next 4 years. Right. And what Kamala Harris is selling with, blame the grocery stores and then I'll give you $25,000 for a new house doesn't exactly. I mean, they're sophisticated voters,
Right.
so they're not, like that shit's not going to sell.
So, look, I don't want to be all black-pilled about this because I do think there's good news in all of this. But now we're sort of at the end of all of these polls. We know where we stand. We wanted to give this to you after Labor Day to sort of set the scene for what you're going to see between now and November. But, we made these arguments to this sort of cohort of voter in 2022. And all the polls said they agreed with us.
Yeah, the exit polls were unanimous.
On inflation, on the economy, on all of this stuff.
They said inflation was a problem, and they blamed Joe Biden. And they still voted Democrat right down the line.
Still voted Democratic, So, how are we going to change that story in a Delco or a Chester, this time around?
Yeah. I mean, look, that's the challenge. I think you've got a little bit of I wouldn't say a lift, but you certainly have the lack of the wet blanket that was an immediate Dobbs decision in 2022, and there were the reaction to that. Now that laws have settled out in places like Pennsylvania, people aren't actually, there's not a fear like that could have some effect with that particular voting bloc that outweighed, frankly, the economy, which is shocking to think about, but I think it did at some level.
And the other difference between 2022 and 2024 is now Trump is on the ballot.
Yeah.
And there were rural voters who like Trump that stayed home in 22.
The 57 to 76 thing that we talk about,
Right,
right?
exactly.
57% turnout in a midterm amongst that voting bloc, 76 in a general. And that is a huge delta that their Democrats are going to have to contend with. And I could be higher than that.
Oh, look, we're going to have to contend with it, too. If we get Donald Trump back in the White House and get congressional majorities, we're going to have to keep him.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. One task at a time. One task at a time. We always ask you a question. And we're going to get to your question that we asked last Thursday after the break. But this question is, what do you think of these polls? And what do you think of the polls in general? Are they right from your understanding of where you live? Or do you think they're a chronic undersample, as people like Carville have argued, that there's like a 3% undersampling no matter what? I'd be interested to hear what you think, because I think all of this, I mean, we're obviously going to find out in 60 days. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. So coming up on Ruthless with the campaign season in full swing, that means campaign ads are flooding in the airwaves. We're going to review some of the best and worst. I've been waiting for this.
This is going to be so much fun.
I
We
can't wait.
we gave you the vegetables up front. I think it was informative and hopefully helpful for all of our listeners and viewers. But now we get to have fun, guys.
Let's go have some candy.
Yeah.
Just a little treat for all of us.
That's why people listen.
I mean, we love ads. We love ads. And so, like, we've been watching these things over the last few months, and there's some of them, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty good. And then you see others, and you're like, oh, my God, that's
That
just
sucks.
absolutely horrible.
Pointless.
So we're going to do that. We've got some variety from Philly to Chile. Bad decisions around, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. You're going to love the variety today, no question. And then we will answer your comments on last week's question about what Kamala's next flip-flop is right after this.
Folks, let me tell you about my friends at Americans for Prosperity, America's largest grassroots organization. Americans for Prosperity is out there every day fighting for you. Their goal? Reignite the American dream. AFP's priorities are simple: secure the border, end inflation, make energy more affordable. And AFP gets results the old-fashioned way, through grassroots activism. They bring together like-minded conservatives, turning them into a grassroots army, and defeating the left's terrible big government agenda in the states and in Washington. And that's where you come in. With the media, celebrities, and universities stacked against us, it's the grassroots that will help us win. So please find an Americans for Prosperity chapter in your state and get in the fight. Go to americansforprosperity.org.
Welcome back. Like we always like to do here on the Ruthless Variety program, we asked you a question, and then we review all of the answers, and we pick a few that we like to read here on the Variety program. The question, as you recall, was what's the next big flip-flop? We did a show last week on over various, it was like a top 5 with Pavlich. It was hilarious.
She was great.
Killed it.
Katie Pavlich was just an incredible addition to the show.
Yeah, totally. And you got to like and subscribe all this stuff to continue hearing it and having your friends hear it. Like and subscribe.
If you wish to opine.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So let's start with the voice on the first one.
Okay, this first one comes from Sparky B. And Sparky B writes, very simply, school choice. The Democrats hate school choice. Sparky B.
That's pretty good. Straight to the point.
Right.
Well, I would love that because it would be very funny, but I hate to ruin it for you, Sparky B. Even cynically, I don't think Kamala could embrace school choice. There's many black Democrat politicians who have the courage to support school choice because
she needs the unions. Though.
Yeah, they see the failing schools in urban areas and know that these kids are being left behind, black and brown kids. But the majority of black Democrats, particularly ones who have ambition for higher office, choose to take power and money from teachers' unions who don't give a shit about children and would rather them fail out of school than learn how to read and write.
Well, a perfect example was that Chicago mayoral election, right? Where they had a relatively reasonable Democrat running against a former union organizer for teachers.
Right.
and who's a psycho. I mean, in every possible way, like off the left-hand side, you wouldn't hire them to like organize your laundry. Right. You know, I mean, but now they're going to organize a entire city like Chicago, which has some of the worst public schools in the country, crime rampant. What do? Voted for the psycho.
Yeah.
With the teacher union backing.
We like it bad.
Yeah, let's make it worse.
Yeah.
So I think you're right about that. I'd
Yeah.
be very, very surprised if she shows any leg on that. What else do we got, Dunks?
This is from Ben Jensen. What is the Kamala flip-flop? He says, the Black Lives Matter movement and how she bailed out those criminals.
Oh.
I do think this is likely.
I do too.
Like, it fits with this phony, I'm tough on crime, I was a prosecutor narrative.
Yeah. Well, they're going to try to do it by indirection, which is what
Right.
they're doing. That like, I'm a tough on crime person,
Yeah.
but pretty soon they're going to get to a point and be like, why'd you bail those criminals out?
Right.
And then she'd be like, I'll never do that.
I don't know if she'll do it. I bet you Tim Walz helps, like, sort of soften that up.
Oh, yeah,
'Cause
he's got an
that is
incredible
a-
record.
Yeah.
That is a tough message for Tim
like-
Walz to deliver.
Despite the fact that I let my city burn to the ground. We love the cops here in Minnesota.
I will assure you, it wasn't her in the bail fund. I let that murderer out.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
He just throws himself in front of the train. That would be the funniest thing. It's like, I did it.
No, I did it. Hey, guys, look, I goofed, okay? Sometimes you goof.
But she's going to be calling the shots. She didn't goof. I goofed. I'm a goof. Sure, I'll drop a couple of blades. We'll run some stuff in the backyard. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, well, I think that could be a likelihood. The third comment comes from Laura Jackson. I think she's going to say that she doesn't support mandatory buybacks of all rifles. Very interesting. That is something that she's spoken directly to. And again, like all of the Kamala Harris quotes that you've seen and we played last week, like extremely definitive.
Right.
Period, she says at the end of all of these things.
Right.
Like, I do this, period.
Right.
Tries to be so clear about it. Or that she doesn't support electric cars. That one's more of a religion on the Democratic side. I don't know. I mean, imagine the mental gymnastics it takes to convince yourself that as leading this country, you should negate all the advantages that you have as a country in oil and gas and the infrastructure that is built in your country and support mandatory change towards something where you're entirely reliant on China
Yeah,
to
right.
produce. Like, what it takes to get there and then to
Right.
say, like, no, this is good policy. Like, I think we've underestimated the amount of commitment to it. Because,
Well-
like, no sane person would ever say, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that.
Then again, they are so dishonest. You can see a video of Tim Walz falling out of a dually truck with a camo hat on and a rifle in his hand saying, "We're not taking your guns or your cars. Just look at me."
Yeah.
Yeah, just look at me. I'm I'm an old white guy.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, but you got a lot of other stuff going on,
Right.
pal. Like,
Just-
you're a left-wing lunatic.
Continuing their fiction that he's something different than everybody knows he is.
Or that she never said that all first-time home buyers receive $25,000. That would be a trick. If she ran an ad and like her only proposal that she's rolled out as president, she was like, no, I didn't do that.
No.
But you notice, I mean, look, to Laura's point, they rolled that thing out
Yeah.
because they were like, all right, we need some policy here.
Some like
it's-
actual new thing.
Yeah, we need something. And then they rolled it out. And immediately across the ideological spectrum, every economist in America was like, that's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. And like, that's it. You listen to 5 days of the DNC convention. It didn't come up.
Didn't come up.
That's a good point.
It did not come up.
I mean, you had like the New York Times and the Washington Post putting up op-eds being like, please don't do this.
How has nobody written that, by the way? The only piece of an agenda that she's outlined whatsoever, the only thing that she's discussed is this very specific thing about her economic plan and grocery stores and $25,000 for home buyers and all these things. And then they have 4 days of primetime television to iron that whole thing in with speaker after speaker. Nobody talks about it.
Nobody.
You know, like if Republicans did that, that would be a front page headline. Be like, well, they know they made a mistake here.
Well, I think it's like, look, I don't think they're actually trying to move the needle with any of these. Like, because I don't think it's popular, and I don't think it's going to motivate the American people to support Kamala Harris.
Right.
I think she literally just wrote in crayon a couple of ideas so she'd have something to answer with if she was asked. You know what I mean?
Well, and I also
seriously.
No, I actually agree.
Like it's not actually about it being a good policy or ever being implemented or particularly like being popular with the electorate. It's literally just so she could fill air in an interview.
No,
she has to have something to
Dude,
say.
I totally agree with you, but I think like there's an added layer to it too. I think that's like 1A, and 1B is she has to do something so press says she does something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm doing something.
Like she doesn't want the story that she's never rolled anything out.
Right.
And so you roll something stupid out, they'd be like, well, I guess you rolled something out. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, people are like, you are an idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, she is an idiot. Take your pick, she says. None of her policies make any sense. Laura Jackson, thank you for the comment. That is exactly right. And great stuff.
Yeah, great stuff.
Really puts thought into it.
Yeah.
I love that. Comments, keep commenting. We honest to God read all of them. They're fantastic. Love every minute of it.
Oh, sorry. I actually have one.
Oh, no.
Well, it's just I wanted to prove the point that we do read all of these, and we seriously do. That isn't just a bit that we do for the show. And there was one from last week that I screenshotted because I thought it was really apt.
I love the fact that we're now going to fill time Top Hat and Kane while he's sorting through his phone.
Yeah.
Well,
with the pictures and
well, I do this because I
screenshots.
I'm sorry. Well,
does.
somebody has to care about the
I
viewer.
mean, just the amount of filth that's all over that phone. Too.
It's mostly just memes.
It's just.
It's a picture of Bill Clinton.
But I mean, look, we do.
Here, I found it.
Oh, okay.
I found it. This is from Bill Witch. He was answering the RFK question on Trump.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a really great comment. We didn't get to it in that show. So is it okay if I read this?
Please.
I think you and others are misinterpreting RFK's impact. It's not just the 5% he had at the end. He had 20% at one point. Those people who wanted to support him but drifted away over time as they realized he had no chance of winning. Now that they see he has a big role to really impact things within the Trump administration, some of that additional 15% are going to vote for Trump. On top of that, it gives permission for Dem leaners and fence sitters to go that way. I saw an article talking about health moms swinging that way. And I thought this was a really smart comment.
Wow.
Because I think that's definitely true, especially in presidential campaigns. I understand that like a lot of his coalition were Democrats who like are brought home by Kamala Harris being the nominee. That is 100% true. But there is something to this comment of people who like they were really into RFK, and part of his attrition from 15, 16 to 5,
they couldn't win.
They couldn't win.
Yeah.
They couldn't win. They're demoralized, and they're like, I can't fix the system. But now RFK is going to be on the transition for Trump.
Yeah.
And that is a permission for those people to get on board with Trump and be like, I can change things.
That's really smart. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, me
it's
too.
worth the time.
It is.
It's worth the Top Hat and Kane routine.
Well, sorry, it took me a little. I had a lot of memes. I had a lot of memes on here.
I love it. All right, so this is going to be our favorite. We're going to do a little ad review.
Yes.
And there's been a lot. We can only pick like 4. But we picked 4, and we're just going to go through them. And, feel free throw that in the comments, too, about what your favorites and unfavorites are. Clip 1 comes from the Trump campaign itself, and what I think is one of the more effective ads at helping to foster the conversation. Like whether or not this changes people's minds, I think is one thing.
Yeah.
But it's drawing attention to a very real sort of endemic problem that Kamala Harris has.
And it's a great table setter for the debate.
Yep, exactly. Clip 1, please.
Everyday prices are too high. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes. That is called Bidenomics. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today. Ground beef is up almost 50%. There's not much left at the end of the month. Bidenomics is working. The price of housing has gone up. It feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. And we are very proud of Bidenomics.
It's so good because it highlights what they were attempting to conceal with 4 days at the DNC, that somehow she wasn't the person behind Bidenomics, that somehow she's just happened upon a scene.
Yeah.
which is what she's trying to do.
Well, and I also love that ad, and for audio-only listeners, is basically like 2 TV screens, like back and forth, paused and play, and you've got, basically a year and a half difference between these two versions of Kamala Harris. Well, what I love about ads like this is you're showing and not telling. Mm-hmm.
More powerful that way.
Not every ad has to have 1,000, chyrons and motion typography and all this sort of stuff and dark, scary images. Sometimes the content can speak for itself.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point, dude. There is no hyperbole. And do you know where you're not seeing this? You're not seeing this in the media. Mm-hmm. Nobody in the mainstream press is showing what she used to say and what she says now and like driving the contrast to say that maybe she's disingenuous.
Yeah, because in every
you don't have to be
in every
hyperbolic.
political ad, you've got a few things you're trying to accomplish. Like you want the ad to be effective on a message that moves voters. You want it to be creative if possible. And it has to be credible. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more credible than her own voice, her own words. It requires no context.
That's 100% right. I also think, and we haven't talked about this before, but if you recall what led to her leaving the primary before Iowa, was not that voters didn't think she was committed to left-wing positions. She made that abundantly clear. It was not that she couldn't raise more money than everybody else. She did that. She raised more money than
She's a senator from California.
Yeah, I mean, she did. She checked every single box as to be a finalist in that discussion. Her problem was every time they were talking about any issue of substance, she'd flop. Mm-hmm. Remember, it started with like the Medicare for All thing. She was this way, she was that way, she was this way. She did like a triple flop on healthcare in a month before she eventually dropped out. There were issues after issues that she would be presented, give a definitive period, point to, and then she'd reverse herself the next week. This is not something that's just like a 6-week thing where she's just trying to get right and clean the slate. This is who she is.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with what she actually believes, and maybe she doesn't believe in all of these things. That's not it. What it is she's trying to just poll test here, figure out where she needs to be in order to mitigate the liabilities amongst the electorate, and she'll say fucking anything.
Yeah.
I mean anything. She if you could poll test that, like, Gnome shooting the dog was a good thing amongst the electorate, she'd be like, I shot my dog too.
I did it. I shot her.
My dog too.
Yeah, I shot my dog.
She would. And then, like, she doesn't worry about shooting dogs after she's president.
Yeah. She also let her sister run her presidential campaign, and it like ran out of money. And she also, every time got on a debate stage, like challenged the other candidates of whether they would ban Donald Trump from Twitter. Like, she was a sideshow. She was a joke.
Yeah.
And she was a punchline 6 months ago.
I know it. Now that you created this myth of Kamala Harris. But let's look at ad 2. This one caught our eye. Incredibly powerful stuff. This is from Preserve America PAC. Clip 2.
My son Joshua was 18 years old when he was murdered by an illegal alien. He was tortured, strangled to death, and then set on fire. When I hear Kamala Harris making a joke about the border and just laughing it off, it's painful. Kamala Harris was in charge of securing our border, and she's done nothing. If Kamala Harris is elected president, it'll get worse. If it can happen to my family, it can happen to yours.
Preserve America PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I think testimonial spots are among the most powerful ads that you could ever run.
Yeah, but it just puts a fine point on this border discussion in that she's tried to get well. She's tried to figure out how to reinvent herself. And she's talking, we'll see in the next clip in her own ads, what she's trying to do to disabuse any responsibility for at the border, despite the fact she was in charge of it, right? That ad, horrible story. Hard not to relate to.
Hard not to relate to, and ending on the note that if it can happen to my family, it can happen to yours, makes it very relatable for a lot of people in these swing states.
No question about it. All right, so we're going to get to the other side here. This is the Kamala Harris campaign in clip 3.
Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
I mean, how many shots of Donald Trump's border wall can you get in that ad? Like, dude, she should have to pay him fucking royalties.
Yeah, it's like, you got my
Excuse
wall.
me, that is copyright infringement.
It's incredible. I mean, the brass balls.
Yeah.
The sheer audacity to say, of all people. And, like, I don't care. I mean, look, I bet you Bernie Sanders has been tougher on border security than Kamala Harris. There's no one. There is not a single person other than, you know, if you work at one of those left-wing Soros-funded make work, fail son operations that advocate for open borders and things like that. Other than that crew with their horn-rimmed glasses and their fucking dorky stuff.
No illegal immigrant's going to steal their job.
Yeah, no, right. Other than that crew, I don't think there's an American who has done more damage to our situation at the border than Kamala Harris, and then she comes out with something like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I hope she keeps running ads like that because it's
not credible,
much more
right?
of a punchline than it is a persuasion. You know, nobody who cares about the border believes a single word that they put in that ad, and they're just wasting their money.
But it does remind me of, you know, some points, you know, that Katie Pavlich was making on our episode last week, which I think was they were really smart and they were well researched. And I think everyone on the right has to do a better job of looking at the full breadth of Kamala Harris's record, not just the last 3.5 years as vice president, but what she did as district attorney, what she did as AG, and what she did as senator. Because there's a lot more to that record, especially on the, you know, soft on crime stuff.
No question. No question about it. She is absolutely vulnerable in all of those things. I just think it's like
laughable.
What they're doing, though, again, I don't know if they think everybody is rubes. They definitely think their own coalition are rubes.
Mm-hmm. Dude, they think everyone is rubes. And the media thinks everyone is rubes. I saw Aaron Blake. That guy, Aaron Blake.
Oh, he's going to be a top seed this year's March.
Where does he work now?
Washington Post.
Washington Post. Aaron Blake and some of these other guys, you know, tweeting out surveys and stuff. Oh, you know, Kamala doesn't carry the baggage of Biden's policies, and, you know, they don't believe she's responsible for, you know, the border and the economy and yada, yada, yada. You know, it's not getting through to voters. Well, like, number one, like, what a weird flex that you're really bad at informing the public about what happened. But, like, on top of that, it's just not fucking true. It's not true. I'm sorry, you're wrong. And you know how I know that? Because she's running that ad.
Yeah, she's
running that ad.
Right.
She knows it's a vulnerability. She wouldn't run the ad unless she knows it's a problem.
They know it's a problem. Here's where I think the target is when you see stuff like this. The target is not to try to just, like you said, anybody who pays attention to this issue is going to laugh heartily.
Right.
But she's got a bunch of suburban voters that were economically facing and part of the Republican coalition in 2014.
She just has to give them an excuse.
That's it. It's a permission structure for issues that cut in their social circles.
No, I heard she's tough.
She backed the strongest border proposal in years.
Imagine that conversation.
And they don't even believe it, but that's just enough for them.
It gives them enough
to be like, well, you know, the mean tweets.
Yeah, that's it. It's the social circle amongst the really weak, like, wine mom coalition that knows damn well that all of these things are bad for them and their families, but they just hate Donald Trump. Orange man bad.
Yeah.
And so they need a little something. Give me a little something to work with. That's what that is. This one's our favorite. And it's from our old friends. The old friends at the Lincoln Pride.
Oh, I can't wait for this one. Are we sure this is appropriate to air on our show?
As far as I've been informed, and I haven't watched the whole thing, but as far as I've been informed, there's no interns that appear in this particular.
We're not going to get any DMs from John Weaver if we air this. I'm closing DMs.
Not closing DMs. The Weaver Man Shanty.
Yeah.
Let's play clip 4, please.
driver's license, registration.
Here you go, sir. How's your day going?
Man's being pulled over.
That's your daughter?
Sure is.
Abigail, right?
How do you know her?
Were you about 8 weeks pregnant?
Okay, come on.
So you've been spotting recently. You've had any cramps or nausea?
Oh. That's personal.
You been taking your prenatal vitamins?
Excuse me?
Are you ticketing me for something?
Where are you heading, Abigail?
To go see my older sister, Natalie.
Well, that's strange. 'Cause it says here that Natalie's at a concert in Dallas. And your navigation is set to a women's health clinic in one of those abortion states.
We have the right to travel.
I mean, the
Not
acting is
anymore.
terrible.
Step out of the car.
Please, officer.
Both of you out now.
It's just, this is, somebody paid for this.
You, sir, are under arrest for crossing state lines to obtain an abortion for a minor under your care. And you, young lady, well, you're under arrest for evading motherhood.
Okay, there's a lot of text on the screen.
Yeah, it's basically saying you're going to get arrested under a Trump administration. And then my favorite part is that they wedge in Project 2025. This is the most amazing, enduring thing that I've seen in politics. Like, I've never seen a presidential campaign. Sometimes you can get away with this in like a mayoral campaign. I've never seen a presidential campaign try to staple on something entirely unaffiliated with a nominee from a major party.
You're talking about Project 2025.
For Project 2020. Staple it onto somebody and be like, yeah, this is what they want to do.
Right.
And then the candidate's like, I've never seen that and I don't have anything to do with it. And they're still like, yep, that's what they're doing.
among the people I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people, I think the only ones who have ever clicked on Project 2025 are the journos. Right. I don't think any Republican has ever even seen it, for crying out loud.
I mean, we do this for the living. I haven't read a word of it.
Yeah, it reminds me. I mean, this is the craziest version of this, but it reminds me of like every cycle the journos get like really invested in the Republican Party platform.
Yes,
and they pull out something and try to paint the nominee as extreme on some issue or whatever, as if like the party platform or Project 25 is more important than like the words that come out of the candidate's mouth of what they believe in.
Right.
You know?
Except conversely, the words that come out of Kamala Harris's mouth
don't matter.
Don't matter.
That's the funniest thing.
I mean, just think about the gymnastics it has to take. Donald Trump's like, that's not mine. I'm not doing that. And they're like, no, he's lying. There's an aide or two. Aides worked on it.
Right.
People who used to work for Trump. So therefore, that's his agenda. And then she's like, I would like to open the border. And I'd like to pay for all of the health care and education services for everybody who comes across. And they're like, well, the aide said on background, that's not true.
That's not true.
And they're
now.
like, so fact check false.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
hilarious.
amazing.
You know, something else that's sort of wild to me is that is the Lincoln Project running an ad that is so ridiculous and hyperbolic. Planned Parenthood is not running that.
Yes. So the reason why I really wanted to play this ad is because I think it encapsulates an interesting dynamic in the Trump era on the left, and that is a lot of ads and media get created, especially like long form stuff on social media, that are basically what we would call in the industry a donor deliverable. Mm-hmm. You know, like you're not actually worried about the effectiveness of the advertising, or is a persuadable voter who could actually move on the issue going to respond to that. What you want to do is produce it for people who are already very hyper partisan against Donald Trump, and then motivate them to open their wallets and give you more money to produce more dog shit ads.
Yeah, it's basically just a business proposition.
Right. And that's what that is.
Built by a bunch of people who spent the predominant amount of their careers working for pro-life politicians.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why we make fun of him with King of the Hill.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's why King of the Hill exists, stupid shit like that. All right, you guys ready for some variety?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This one is hilarious. New York Post. Passenger destroys American Airlines counter with a hammer after scammer sold him a fake ticket. I got a lot of questions, so I'm gonna read some of this and then we'll contextualize it. An enraged traveler was caught on camera destroying an American Airlines counter in Chile with a hammer just moments after realizing the scammer had apparently sold him a fake plane ticket. The Haitian man flew into violent rage at Santiago's Nuevo Pudel airport late Monday after trying to check in for his American Airlines flight to Miami, Florida, local outlet Cooperativa.
Right, that's actually really good.
Pretty
Holmes.
good. Yeah. I'm bilingual as shit. Footage shot by bystanders showed the construction worker, who was set to stop over in Miami en route to Haiti, suddenly rifling through his work bag after an airline employee informed him he wouldn't be able to board the flight. He was filmed screaming as he climbed behind the counter and started obliterating multiple mounted TV screens with a hammer. That might not make it through DSA, but, it is what it is. The man then smashed several computer screens in the counter. The clip shows an irate passenger caused roughly $20,000 in damages, authorities said, and he was detained by security. Airport rage, it's one of my favorite things in the world to watch.
It happens.
It's like a car accident. Like, you have to actually watch. You got to turn and look.
It is. I remember years ago, I was traveling for a campaign, and I had to connect through Chicago O'Hare. And it was winter. And if you have to connect through Chicago O'Hare in the winter, like, you roll a dice. You kind of know what you got going.
You understand airport rage.
Yeah. But obviously the flight's canceled. And then they moved gates for a next flight, and then they moved gates again, 2 different sides of the airport. And then finally, after 3 gate changes, like running throughout the airport to try to get on a plane, they canceled the final flight. And I watched a man who was a business traveler. He was in a suit, standing at the counter, asking the woman what he should do, and her basically being like, I got nothing for you. And he just picks up his suitcase calmly and then does a discus twist and fires his briefcase across the entirety of the concourse, hitting the wall. Like, at the top of the wall, it explodes, papers everywhere. And like, everybody's in shock and terror. And I'm sitting there, like, with my, then it was like an iPod.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I couldn't stop laughing. Everybody was like, dude, don't, like, inflame the situation. I couldn't stop laughing. It was completely hilarious.
That's very funny.
But that's kind of what I look like. I think
I'd like to know what a Chilean airline ticket scalper looks like.
Yeah.
Is he just like opening the coat?
How does that work?
On approach?
Because like
you're parking
and
the
airline
car.
tickets?
I thought like after 9/11,
Souvenirs, party tricks.
Like every ticket was associated with a specific individual at point of purchase. Like, I didn't know there was a resale market for airline tickets.
Like
at
you
this point.
standing outside of a football stadium saying, "You want to go to Miami?
Yeah.
I got a ticket for you."
Like a big trench coat. Yeah, I love
souvenirs, party tricks,
cigarettes, cigars.
No, it's true. Like, I didn't. Like, how do you buy a fake plane ticket?
I don't know, man. Dude, maybe it's just
different countries.
Maybe it's just weird in the rest of the world. Like, America's the only place that has it locked down. I mean, we got our problems with airline travel.
Yeah.
But I think we have it more locked down than the rest of the world. One thing I would say about O'Hare in particular, I've got an O'Hare story too. One of my favorite things, and I highly recommend this in O'Hare, because I just love people watching.
Yes.
So O'Hare has a very large international terminal. And if you do a lot of business travel and you're out on the first flight in the morning, like, you're landing in O'Hare for your connection at like a 9:30. If you see like an international like flight, if you see an international flight coming in from like Europe or Asia, and they're landing at 9 a.m. and like, I get it, they've been stuck on
they're in a cylinder for the last
But like, without a doubt, like, I would bet you on it. If you're in that international terminal in O'Hare, there will be a foreigner going up and getting a full-on Chicago dog at 9:30 in the morning. It's just housing that thing like it's a bacon, egg, and cheese. It is so funny because, like, you see the first time you see it, you're like, what? Oh God, what are you doing?
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was like a pickle spear at 9 in the morning? It's like, ma'am, those are sport peppers. That is not a breakfast food. You know?
I also love the airport in that there is actually no judging.
Yeah, no, it's like time stopped.
It's the only place in the world within the confines of an international airport where, like, someone rolls up and orders like a triple vodka rocks at 9 pre 9 a.m.
Vodka rocks.
And nobody looks at him like, dude, call AA.
Or
like, everybody's like,
or
sounds like a good idea.
My favorite is like people who will go to Cinnabon and get the big Cinnabon.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're talking like 1,500 calories.
Yeah, staple that thing
just
right to
sugar.
your ass.
Well, I don't know. I'm not the best flyer. I kind of have a nervous stomach. I can't imagine just putting that battery acid right in the gut.
There is a Ben's chili bowl at DCA.
Yeah. Can you imagine doing that? I mean, I feel like that's an act of terror. You load somebody up with a chili whatever, and then you send them on a flight.
Right.
Well, so I think there's actually one worse at DCA.
Okay.
Look, I love Chinese food. Yeah. I love a succulent Chinese meal.
Succulent Chinese.
Okay.
What are you arresting me for?
A succulent Chinese meal.
If you haven't seen that viral clip, by the way, you got to see it. Just search succulent Chinese meal on YouTube, and you'll get it, and you will thank me.
But they put in a PF Chang's at DCA, and like, look, maybe you've had a big weekend. You went on a bachelor party or something, and you return to DCA. I'm with you, dude. Broccoli and beef. Maybe you get some pot stickers. Take those on the road with you. Take them home and feast. Feast like a king. You earned it. But if you bring that shit onto a flight, you are a terrorist. You're a terrorist. You're a terrorist.
Yeah.
The smell of sesame oil and cornstarch, it's too much for an airplane. Please, just don't do it.
And it is like all of these things are how you ultimately read about the people having to divert a plane because there's like a biohazard inside the plane. Like, remember the one we read about a few weeks ago where somebody like shat down an aisle?
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we have to land this plane immediately.
It's just terrific.
You can't come back from that, by the way. No. I mean, I think first of all, you abandon all air rights from there on out. But you have to leave your city and stay.
Well, but anybody else who's on that flight, you turn into John Madden. You're taking a bus from A to B. You never get on a plane again. You're like, because I don't want that.
Turn him into John Madden. I love that. That's so good. All right, so this one, guys.
Okay.
This is the Spaghetti special.
Okay.
You know how he likes it a little racy.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
Spaghetti really does.
He does. He likes it a little racy, which is good. It might be that Italian in him. You know, you just never know.
They run a little hot.
I'm not going to read the headline, but I'm gonna read the story.
Okay.
It was gearing up to be a disastrous climax. A couple was, quote unquote, getting busy in their car. Nearly ended in tragedy after the SUV rolled into a Philadelphia river right in the middle of the night while they were in the back seat. The lovebirds were having sex in a 2020 Range Rover near the Schuylkill River in Fairmount Park around 4:15 a.m. One of their limbs bumped into the SUV's gear stick. Police told NBC 10. Moments later, the Range Rover tumbled over the edge and sank into the water about 2 miles from Philadelphia's City Hall. The unidentified couple jumped out of the SUV before the vehicle hit the water and plummeted beneath its surface. Neither was injured in the incident. Police told NBC 10 they suspect the couple were, quote unquote, getting busy. That's a legal term. That's a legal term. When the freak mishap occurred, the Range Rover was hoisted out of the river at 9 a.m. The outlet reported images of the SUV show it wholly submerged near the Strawberry Mansion Bridge. Law enforcement shared that no charges are pending against the erogenous couple.
So unsaid in this article, but I think it deserves to be noted here, is like, I hope they got a full blood screening after this, because drowning is the least of your problems when you go into the Schuylkill. Okay? You're lucky if you don't come up with a hypodermic needle in your ass.
Well, that is a very good point. I think the other thing is that they have substantiated, at least according to police, that these people were in the back seat, and somehow they were able to deal with a gear shift up front. Unless this woman was having sex with Manute Bull, I'm not sure exactly how that works. An SUV, a Range Rover is not a small car.
No. It was passionate. It was passionate.
It was extremely bad.
I just enjoyed a succulent Chinese meal.
George Mirasan was unavailable to comment.
And his girlfriend, Rebecca Lobo.
Yeah, right. I mean, seriously, it takes some doing.
Yeah.
Put the thing in gear from the back seat.
Yeah, no, you got to shoot right through the front two seats.
Yeah.
So you're hitting a target that's very small. The shifter is not it's not the biggest thing in a car, right? I mean,
sure isn't.
So you're
well, it certainly wasn't that day.
Yeah.
Well. Cheyo. I mean, I just saying, like, first of all, this is the kind of story you read about in like the 1950s.
It's very Philadelphia.
If you're in a Range Rover, is a 2020 Range Rover, that's not an inexpensive car.
Yeah.
Too much to maybe spring for a Marriott.
I don't know. I mean, look, if it's after a Birds game,
man.
It's 4:15 a.m. So there's a lot of bad decisions.
He could have from 1 to 3. He could have been out doing in Luca Brasi.
Oh, jeez. Now you're blaming it on spaghetti. You're taking it back to spaghetti.
We've come full circle. Back to the Italians.
Guy just needed to relax.
He was doing in Luca Brasi, then posting up LeBron James, and then going to the Schuylkill River.
Yeah, that's what he was doing.
All right. Well, it turns out they're still investigating. Police are still investigating.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's my favorite part. Well, we're still investigating there.
Yeah.
Motive unclear.
Motive unclear.
To quote Smug, what more can be said?
What more can be said? I love it. All right, boys, we're in the thrux of things. We're excited. Hopefully you got a little bit of information here about where things stand and how hard everybody needs to work to ensure that we don't have a country we don't recognize next year. And that is where we are headed. Our question of the day, what do you think? Are the polls wrong? Are they undersampling? Are they oversampling? Everything is tight as a tick. We want your comments on that. You got to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. The only way, and I mean this sincerely, the only way people are able to see this show is when you do your part by liking and subscribing to this show.
Yeah, and hit the bell, the notification bell, too. We're going to have some updates in the near future about...
Oh, yeah, we've got some fun stuff. It's post-Labor Day, so we have some fun stuff to announce here.
Yeah, but having that notification on will ensure if perhaps the variety program does some additional content.
Maybe we show up.
You get a little ding, 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 ding.
Maybe we show up in the back of a 2020 Range Rover. You never know. You never know. Check out the merch while you're there. With all that being said, I think we did it, and I think Hollywood Hen's got to lead us out.
Another banger of an episode, folks. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. Stay ruthless.